Thank you for listening to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast, available on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Stitcher. Also, please follow Matt's Movie Reviews on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Reddit, Instagram, and MeWe. And of course, be sure to visit mattsmoviereviews.net for the latest reviews, top 10 lists, and more. Now, on to the show.
You guys good back there? Keep your eyes open, you might see a whale.
Or a shark.
One day I was out on my own, one grabbed me from behind. Luckily it was more of a love bite than a real chomp. Welcome to Hell's Reef.
We made it.
Hey! A shark attack.
It's got to be out there somewhere.
You've got no idea where to look. The chance of finding anything is almost zero.
Yeah, we have to try. She could still be alive.
We're sinking fast.
We're in the current. By morning, we'll be 75 k's from here.
Get a mayday out?
Not sure.
What about the rescue boat?
The current is running east. We use it to get to the coast.
You're kidding.
You got a better idea?
So do you think it's gone?
It's still out there, and it's close. Everyone get out of the water!
Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 351. Out now in Australian cinemas and releasing June 30 on Blu-ray, DVD, and digital is Great White, a horror thriller that pits 5 survivors of a seaplane crash against a man-eating great white shark that stalks their every move. Featuring stunning locations, thrilling shark attack sequences, and engaging characters, Great White also marks the feature film debut of Martin Wilson, who joins me now on the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. Martin, I thank you very much for joining me today.
Oh, great to speak to you, Matt.
So the screenplay for this film is written by Michael Belgen, and he's a producer. He did work on Tomorrow When the War Began and The Loved Ones. He wrote the screenplay for Dying Breed as well. So screenplays from him don't come along too often. When did you first find about his script, and what was it about it that really kind of drew you to wanting to do your first feature film? Because I know you've been wanting to do this for a while. You've been doing TV and film work, shorts for 25 years now, but this is your first feature. So what's it about Michael's script that really kind of drew you into doing this movie?
Yeah, well, the script came through our producers, Michael Robertson and Neil Kingston, and I was drawn to it because I thought it was a great opportunity to really use the locations and the visual. There's a lot of great visual scope that came through the script in terms of showcasing, the northern tropical waters of Australia, which is really sort of beguiling and beautiful, and, contrasting that to, what lurks underneath these beautiful sort of beguiling waters. So there was a chance to really, explore that so that really drew me to the screenplay.
Does getting the chance to also work on a creature feature appeal as well? I know that The Thing is one of your favorite movies. I actually listened to a podcast you on previously. You talked about watching that film over and over when you were a kid, and I'm sure that kind of developed kind of like your passion for wanting to become a filmmaker yourself. Does working on a movie that's a creature feature, a shark attack film, something that you really wanted to sink your teeth in, pardon the pun there?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you grow up, you certainly get drawn to certain types of films, and The Thing, and or the original Fright Night, Aliens. These types of movies were a big part of my childhood. So I definitely love genre and the creature feature genre of filmmaking, and so I was definitely drawn, and lucky enough to get an opportunity myself to have a crack at it.
It's interesting. People have compared the film. It's kind of like as a mix between Hitchcock's The Lifeboat and Spielberg's Jaws. I think that's something that people kind of like clash together to try to describe what your movie is. And you can really see that, of course, is just in the plot elements of the film itself. It's really interesting though, like in the film, your film itself, it has little nods to other movies as well. There's one particular scene I wanted to bring up with you, and I don't think anyone has yet. So when we first meet Kimi Tsukakoshi's character in the movie, it kind of reminiscent of how we first meet Kate Winslet in Titanic. Was that kind of like a nod to James Cameron in Titanic there?
Look, I know the scene in Titanic with the hat.
Yes.
So I think it was definitely let's just say a visual reference. So very well picked up on. But I think someone had seen that film and had liked that moment in a way. How do you introduce each character, give them a bit of a moment and a sense of significance in a way. So I guess it was a nice touchstone.
And I want to talk about the rest of the cast as well. Let's start with Katrina Bowden. She's an American actress. People know her more for her work in 30 Rock and other kind of comedies as well. Here she is the lead in your movie. How did Katrina come about to be cast in Great White?
Well, Katrina was someone that we thought, had a really strong presence in the North American market and had done a good broad range of films. So we felt that she was a fantastic fit for the character, a part of Kaz, and who's a really dynamic character and it has got a sense of adventure but also complex in the sort of in the internal stuff that she's going through. So yeah, Katrina was just such a delight to work with and just so dynamic on the set and really just just threw herself into the part, which is amazing because it was so demanding.
The other cast in your film, the non-human element of the film, which is the sharks themselves. I'm curious, how much of it was practical and how much of it was a CG, what we see on the screen?
I think it was a really balanced, basically a third split between the practical animatronic shark, Brenda, the stock sharks and CGI sharks.
How do you go about creating your sharks? Who are you working with? Who's the guys that's putting together these things for you?
Well, I guess we were Chop Shop was the post-production house, and so they were the main players in the creation of the sharks.
When it comes to location, the movie set in this place called Hell's Reef. Is that an actual place, Hell's Reef, where the film's set?
No, it's just a good old-fashioned made-up location. But, it's supposed to represent Northern Australia and all the I guess there's the history of the pearling. There's a deep history of the pearling in northern parts of Australia. In WA, it's Broome, and there's also parts in Darwin and northern Queensland. So, the location's supposed to be representative of that type of landscape and part of the coastline of Northern Australia.
The job that yourself and cinematographer Tony O'Loughlin in really capturing that scenery is really spectacular, almost to the point that I'm watching this movie and I understand that underneath the ocean is a terror underneath there that's going to tear me apart, but I want to jump into that water. How important was it to really kind of have that alluring aspect to want people to jump in that water, even though they'll probably lunch if they do?
I think it was what we're deliberately obviously trying to make, all these sort of stunning, epic-looking locations, I guess, be appealing to an international audience who don't live here and would find that more exotic and interesting just to look at. And then obviously the thematic qualities of danger and suspense that you can draw out of that type of location. And another key element was the isolation and the vastness of the ocean.
Yeah. And
having this small raft which was losing air, in the middle of nowhere with no apparent escape.
When it comes to shooting on water, this was a 25-day shoot, which is kind of remarkable considering all the elements that you had to kind of put together to make this all work, and it does work very well. When it comes to shooting on water, how much of those 25 days were you actually in location up north shooting in actual seas?
probably I'd say a good 60, 70% was on location in the water. And it's obviously, and 25 days is a really tough short schedule when you're shooting on water with the elements, the tides and winds and things like that. So, yeah, and the other components was the various tanks that we shot in, underwater tanks, and studios, and then we had a huge big prawn farm, like a dam on the Gold Coast. So we used that a lot because, we had a lot of sinking plane stuff just for safety that you can't do out on the open water.
There's scenes I don't want to give away too much, but there's scenes in the film where both Katrina Bowden and also Aaron Jakubenko, who plays the role of Charlie, they're actually underwater for a substantial amount of time. And you've got the practical shark in there. You're doing things with that. How much prep does it take for them to get ready physically to be able to pull that off? Because I imagine with 25 days shooting, you're going to be able to get in there, do those shots quickly, get them done really well with the practical shark element as well. I mean, I imagine that perhaps even when casting, you're looking at actors who are able to do that kind of stuff underwater, right?
Yeah, it's a great question because it does take a lot of preparation, and the actors are in confined, claustrophobic locations where you're holding your breath often. So we had Aaron Jakubenko is just an absolute legend and master. Very, very. Aaron's very, very accomplished with swimming and holding his breath, and just dealing with water because he'd shot a series called Tidelands where he had a lot of training. Mm-hmm. So we were very fortunate to have Aaron on board because he really knew how to, physically handle that type of stress, and not only is a really talented and committed actor, but he's a very physical actor with a great broad knowledge and training of working in water. So it's so important. It can just really can bog you down if you get stuck both above and below the water.
It's interesting. When I was watching Great White, not long before that, I was sent a documentary to watch as well about shark conservation, etc. And it, the education we have about sharks over the years, especially since, say, the days of Jaws and such, has really given us a different kind of look at what sharks are, what they can do. But despite all of this stuff, we still have this kind of innate fear, don't we, of what's not only in the water, but what's in the sharks. Where do you think that fear comes from? Is that just something that's primal? I mean, to the point where way back when, how many thousands of years ago, anything that can eat us is still stuck in our DNA, and that's just something that really kind of just gives us that fear, that nightmare-inducing kind of imagery, especially when it comes to a shark attack movie?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's just embedded in there, and the ruthless, animalistic danger that we know is out there, and I guess it also works in a vicarious way because people like to watch horror movies and sort of, cathartically live through other characters and have that fear, and like you would on a roller coaster ride yourself when you go on these crazy, rides and things like that. You'd have the fear, and then that, you're not actually in peril. I think there's that sense of like relief, So I think it's all part of the same thing. It's really interesting.
What's also interesting as well is that sometimes when I watch movies, you can kind of count the beats of a certain scene, especially when it comes to horror movies of this kind of nature. What I love about Great White is that every single time I try to predict when a strike would happen, I was wrong almost 100% of the time. I like the fact they kind of mess with convention in that way. When you're in editing, when you putting together the sequences of shark attacks, did you like kind of being able to mess around the psychology of these movies, of what people think they might see, and then boom, hitting them with an unexpected kind of twist of when a shark attack will happen on your screen?
I think you do try and give it a point of difference, or I guess I'm, like I've studied, you study all the filmmakers as a director, and you look at people like Hitchcock and you try and work out what makes their scenes work, what makes them tick, how did he do that, and then you try your best to use that in your own films. Obviously, when you're writing the scene, firstly, and then when you're actually shooting it physically, and then when you're cutting it. So all that was definitely top of mind. How do we how do you really string an audience along and give them that sense of suspense and then relief and suspense and relief and that roller coaster ride. Was that, when you don't have a lot of time and you don't have a lot of money, these types of tools, I guess, are your friend,
Well, I got to say, Great White has to be one of the better shark attack movies I've seen. I get a lot of them sent my way. It's so good to see one made with such great professionalism, and the story's great, and the characters are great, and the sharks look great as well. And for everyone out there listening, Great White is out now in theaters in Australia at a limited capacity. I think for the next week or so, they're going to be showing in limited screens, but then it's going to be June 30, Blu-ray and DVD. Make sure you check it out in the cinema first, because the photography and the effects and everything really screams out for that. So hopefully people do watch this in the cinema before they get it in Blu-ray next to their copies of Open Water and Jaws, because it really does belong in the pantheon of those shark attack movies. And Martin Wilson, I just want to say congratulations with your feature film debut. This is really cool stuff, man, and I can't wait to see what you got next and be able to talk about your future films as well.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Yeah, definitely June 30th. It's out on all major digital platforms as well.
Awesome.
So, your Apple TVs and YouTube. So, yeah, excited about it and excited about moving on to the other projects. So great to talk to you. And I'm really glad you really understood what we were trying to do with the movie, which is awesome.